Hello and cześć. I thought I would start this episode with something personal. My mom listens to every episode and she likes to embarrass me with this story. I was around 8 years old and we were coming back to Warsaw in our tiny orange car, a Fiat Maluch. As we got closer, a large building appeared on the horizon. It was the Palace of Culture and Science, Pałac Kultury i Nauki in Polish. At that time, it was the biggest building in Warsaw. In my excitement in getting back home, and upon seeing that building, instead of saying Pałac Kultury, I said Kościół Kultury, calling it a church of culture. The main point of the story is that my mom finds it funny. Love you, mom. This slightly embarrassing story also allows me to segue into the topic of this episode, the Palace of Culture and Science, Pałac Kultury i Nauki, but most people call it Pałac Kultury for short. This building is hard to ignore, and it was made to be like this. It is a building loaded with recent history and political struggle, an unwanted gift from Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union. Personally, I don't mind it. It is a product of its time, a relic of the past. I don't think it's a beautiful building, but it is unique, and now Warsaw wouldn't be Warsaw without it. For older people who grew up during the time of Stalinism and repression, the palace is a symbol of domination by the USSR, and there were recent talks of tearing it down, which I understand. On the other hand, as Warsaw becomes a more diverse city, the palace is losing its historical burden. The original name proposed was the Palace of Culture and Science, named after Joseph Stalin, with Stalin's name being dropped after his death in 53. As the name suggests, the Palace of Culture and Science was meant to serve as a home for educational and cultural institutions. The formal agreement between Polish and Soviet governments for the construction of the palace was signed in April 1952. Construction started a month later in May, lasting 3 years to July 1955. Government propaganda advertised it as a gift from the Soviet people to the Polish people, a wonderful gift from a great ally and friend. It was a gift that the Polish people did not want but couldn't refuse, a symbol of domination in the heart of Warsaw. The Soviet architect who designed the palace was Lew Rudniew, whose best known work is the Moscow State University. The Palace of Culture is similar to the Seven Sisters of Stalin, a group of social realism skyscrapers in Moscow. To Rudniew's credit, he did not copy paste an exact replica of a building from Moscow into Warsaw. He traveled around Poland, visiting Krakow, and added elements of Polish architecture as well as New York Art Deco into the final design. 9,000 construction workers worked on the palace for 3 years, with 5,000 workers coming from the Soviet Union while 4,000 came from Poland. As you can probably guess, safety standards in the 50s were not the best, and unfortunately, 16 people died during construction. With a height of 237 meters, it was the tallest building in Poland. It held this title for 66 years until 2021, when the Warsaw Tower, also in Warsaw, overtook it by 73 meters. It's an immensely large building with 123,000 square meters of interior space and 3,288 rooms. If you wanted to sleep in each room for one night, you would finish after 9 years, unless security kicked you out first. The palace has 44 floors above ground and 2 below ground. On the 30th floor, there's a public viewing terrace which allows you to see Warsaw from a height of 114 meters. The elevator ride only takes 19 seconds. Talk about moving up in the world. If you visit the terrace, you will definitely notice the metal safety cages around the openings. These were installed in the 70s after several suicides. The official website of the palace mentions 3 suicides, while unofficially the number is probably 7 or 8. Officially, the first suicide was from the viewing terrace in 1958, then again in 1965 by a French citizen. The last suicide was in 1986 when a 35-year-old Polish man jumped from a window on the 24th floor. On a more positive note, the palace employs 11 cats in the underground levels to keep the palace rodent free. On the 6th floor, there's a beehive, while at the highest point, under the spire, there's a falcon nest. As I mentioned before, there was discussion about tearing down the palace. However, that issue was settled in 2007, when the palace was added to the Register of Monuments, preventing any future demolition. Opponents of this move stated that the palace is a symbol of Poland's oppression, while supporters underline that the palace is one of the best preserved examples of social realism architecture. Its interior contains many rooms finished with excellent materials. Destroying these would mean destroying the legacy of Polish artists. And here I would have to agree. Looking at photos from inside the palace, I think we can agree that the interior decorations are truly impressive. Another impressive place inside the palace is the Sala Kongresowa, Congress Hall, which is a large theater and concert venue with over 2,800 seats. Eric Clapton, Ray Charles, Luciano Pavarotti, and the Rolling Stones are some of the artists who perform there. I will end with a story with which you can either impress or annoy your Polish friends with, and it has to do with the height of the palace. For many, it was an unpleasant fact that this unwanted gift was the highest building in Poland for decades. However, we can only blame the Polish, not the Soviet, architects for this. To determine the height of the building, Soviet and Polish architects gathered on the right bank of the Vistula River. A small plane flew over the future site of the palace, pulling a large balloon behind it, so the architects could visualize and set the final height. The Soviets decided that 120 meters would be enough. However, the Poles began shouting, "Higher, higher," until the tip of the spire was set at 230 meters. This could have been done by the Polish side to get more money out of the Soviets, as they were paying for the whole thing, but we will never know. Love it or hate it, the Palace of Culture and Science is here to stay. While it started as an unwanted gift, I think that it has found its place in the fabric of Warsaw as a symbol that cannot be ignored. Take care.